I really much focused on getting things done. I think that I took every opportunity to execute on something as if it was the biggest thing for the company.
Keren, Fanan, thank you for joining me on 20-Minute Leaders. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you. How are you?
Fantastic. Are you calling from Israel right now?
Yes. Yes, I'm in Israel today.
Wonderful. Well, I'm in Israel as well, and it's great to have you on this show because I am very excited to talk to you about your position at Gett, and not just your position as Chief Commercial Officer at Gett, one of Israel's proudest companies, a unicorn within Israel that probably every Israeli uses, if not on a daily basis, at least on a weekly basis. But I believe that it's branched to be much greater than just Israel at this point. You'll tell us more about that. But really, your journey within Gett and your journey as an entrepreneur, as you mentioned previously, I think will be fascinating. But we have to start all the way from the beginning, from Cotopaxi. what happened, and what prompted you to climb the largest volcano?
So yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I was always a big fan of doing of extreme, right? So bungee jumping and jumping from a plane. And I, when I traveled in Israel, it's quite common that when you finish the army, you usually go and travel for a few good months. So I did my trip at South America, and when I got to Ecuador, I was told that there is the highest active volcano that if you want you can climb, and it's as simple as that. You don't need to prepare, you don't need to do anything, you just need to register. Obviously it was extremely difficult.
Yeah, it's like 19,000 feet, right? Like 5,000 more than 5,000 meters tall.
Right, yeah. Like, you don't climb everything, you can do a part of the road by a car. And then in order to climb to the cliff, you have to wake up at something like 12 a.m. Because it's freezing there. So you really need to kind of wake up when it's nighttime, and then you have special equipment and you start to climb. And by the sunrise, you get to the top, you get to see the sunrise, and then you have to go all the way down. So it was really kind of once in a lifetime experience.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I have to say that I can relate pretty close to what you're saying. I didn't climb Cotopaxi. I climbed Kilimanjaro about a year and a half ago with my family, and we had to wake up at midnight and climb during the night so that we have better footing on the frozen on the frozen hill. And it's probably one of the most difficult things I've ever done. But that reward of getting up there, we actually missed the sunrise by a few minutes, so we have to do it again. But but getting
Sounds
to the
like
topic,
it.
it's remarkable. Keren, what is the responsibility of a chief commercial officer at a company like Gett?
So obviously, like, commercial or revenue responsibility may be a little bit different between companies. So at Gett, the responsibility includes to drive the revenue from our core business units. One of our main business units at Gett is the B2B activity, which we've recently developed into a more of a global SaaS product. So as chief commercial, I'm actually managing all of the sales organization, as well as the account management, but also the marketing activity. And I'm also, overlooking the acquisition and retention in our consumer business. So basically, everything that generates revenue to the company sits within the commercial unit.
It sounds a little bit important from what I'm
Yeah, a
gathering.
little bit.
Just a tiny bit.
Money is important in most
But
cases.
Keren, most of us know Gett as a B2C product. I'm ordering it through my app, and I go down there. What is a B2B initiative of a ride-sharing company like Gett? What
Yeah,
kind of initiatives are there?
that's a great question, because Gett is indeed known for being a consumer company, because that's how it was kind of born. But not many people know that right after the launch of the consumer service, Gett also launched a B2B service for corporations, and basically developed a technology that helps companies to manage their taxi rides for their employees. So, for example, if you work for a company that and you need to travel quite a lot for work purposes. So if in the past you had to go, take a taxi, keep the receipt, and then reimburse it, then and expense it, then today, by using the Gett platform, you don't really need to do it, because everything is managed by the Gett system. And all you have to do is just to kind of, switch to the business profile, book a taxi, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And what we've lately also been doing is to take the same platform globally by integrating into the local providers. So we started by announcing a partnership with Lyft in the US, because Gett, do not operate in the US, but also with Ola in London and Keren International, which is a large chauffeur service, and so on and so forth. We keep on integrating into many, many providers. So slowly we are kind of creating a global ecosystem of all of the existing providers, the consumer providers that we all know, and we make it more accessible for business purposes.
It sounds complicated, exciting, and pretty innovative to for a company that, whether it was consumer centric up until now, but you're adapting to the emerging needs, obviously, of all of these different corporations. But Keren, you have an even more unique to what you're doing is the journey of how you got there. So starting at entry level. So before that, you spent a few years at AT&T, technical project manager now, and then moved into R&D product management. How does that work, entering a company like Gett as an entry level and making your way to C-level internally? Talk to me a little bit about the process and the challenges that go with that.
I'd love to. So first of all, I think I would divide it to two kind of major transitions, right? The first one was the fact that I moved from R&D and tech organizations into operations, because when I joined Gett, I joined as a marketing operations manager, which pretty much means that you need to execute all of the global marketing projects. Before that, my experience was solely based on R&D and technology and releasing new versions to become live and deploy new versions. So that change was quite massive, because it's completely different language, different pace. And that was great. I think Gett has given me the opportunity to move from tech to operations without any experience in marketing, because they believe in general, it's a company that believes that if you have the skill set and the motivation, you do not necessarily need to have the super specific relevant experience, which I really believe in that, because I think that when people brings their different experiences from different roles and different departments, they actually create something very much unique and diverse, rather than just kind of doing the same over and over again. So I joined Gett as marketing operations manager, which is as mentioned, an entry level position, and since then I started a crazy journey, or roller coaster if you want to call it. I think that there were several things that helped me in that journey. First of all, I really much focused on getting things done. I think that I took every opportunity to execute on something as if it was the biggest thing for the company. Looking back, I know that many of the things that I've done at the beginning were not that important. But, if we were talking 5.5 years ago, you would hear me talking about it as if that is going to change the face of the company, So
I love it. I love that.
Yeah, and I think that, it's a part of the thing, because when you kind of approach something as if it's the most important thing, and you execute it in the best possible way, which means that if someone's asked you to do this, you will do something here, right? Like way beyond, think out of the box, and most importantly, execute, right? That is a critical thing. And I was lucky enough also to work in a company that embrace innovation and embrace execution. So, when my manager saw that, I'm capable of executing that, he gave me more challenges. So the next challenge that I got was to launch a brand new idea that Gett had. It was right at the time that Gett changed its name from Gett Taxi to Gett. And they had this crazy idea that Gett can get you anything. So you can get pizza on demand, flowers on demand, a courier on demand to do deliveries for you. And my manager asked me, if you want to launch it. Again, it sounds big. It was just me doing everything, seeing what we can do. And that's how I started, that was the first step in launching the first startup within startup. We started by launching verticals at Gett, different products that you can get on demand. And I remember, we had to do everything, right? Like engage with couriers. We wanted to register them. So we went and downloaded like a freemium form online and ask the couriers to use the free form to register. And then we brought them in to do some kind of, training session,
groups,
how to use the app. So you actually have to do everything exactly like building a startup in your own garage.
Like building a startup.
Right. It's just that you do it within an already operating company. Obviously, you can leverage some of the tools that exist, but in most cases, you really have to do everything as if it's the first time for the company. And so I've been doing that for several months. After several months, I think I had to learn one of the greatest kind of lessons, which was to decide what we do not do. We started to do all of this kind of crazy pizza, sushi stuff in 10 minutes. But we had to acknowledge that, not all of these kind of channels or services actually work. And the only thing that actually was well adopted by the market in Israel, but also in other markets, was the courier service.
Yes.
So back then, we decided to kind of shut down all of the products on demand. Because getting flowers in 10 minutes is cool, but many people will pay a little bit more to get the specific bouquet that they want, even if they need to wait 3 hours, right? So
right. Interesting. That's an interesting behavior observation. And at first, before you continue, I have to say thank you, because I am probably one of the biggest users of Gett delivery in my day-to-day life. It completely changed the way I think about logistics. And I think that especially for for people that are busy and they have stuff to do, one of the things that have been fascinating for me over this past decade or so is the amount of tools that are at our disposal to make our days more efficient. And all of a sudden, 10 years ago, if you were to ask somebody if they have an alternative to go to the store or drive 20 minutes to the flower store to pick up something and bring it back, there was no dilemma. You have to do it. Now, with the introduction of Gett Delivery and other services, the whole consumer mindset has shifted. And I really think that Gett Delivery had a pivotal role in educating the market on that, educating consumer behavior. You educated me into thinking more critically about what can I use technology for in my day-to-day life and whatnot. So thank you, Keren. And I'm already so happy that we got to meet. So I just want to say thank you.
I'm happy to hear. There's nothing that makes me happier than, hearing people saying how they like the service. Obviously, I use it a lot as well. But yes, I agree. I think that Gett Delivery kind of, brings the importance of our time, right? If we can save time and use technology to do stuff for us, that's amazing. And I think it's something that in the past, it did not exist at all.
Along with the fact that most small businesses don't have delivery service. So you're actually opening up a whole market, because if I now need to get some plumbing equipment from a few streets away, then the only way before was to go physically there. But please continue with your journey.
Right. Yes. So back to Gett Delivery. So back then we had to decide, I had to decide, to shut down some of the activities. It's never a fun decision to decide that, but I think that it was another kind of step in the journey to prove, again, to the company that I'm capable, in the same way that I'm capable of taking new stuff and trying them it's also okay to come and say, look, this thing doesn't work, this thing works better, let's double down on what works. So we invested more in Gett delivery. We expanded the service. At this time, I was also promoted to lead Gett delivery globally, also in the UK and in Russia. So for the first time in my life, I had to, manage teams abroad and hire people in different countries, different cultures, different languages, which was another critical step.
What was the hardest part about shutting down some products? So taking that ownership, and what I'm hearing in between the lines here is that this was also kind of a pivotal role in your career, as you're not just this entrepreneur that is excited and growing things and saying, let's just run, but you're also taking that accountability and that leadership ownership over things that aren't necessarily working and saying to the company, listen, this is my initiative. Some worked, some didn't, but I'm taking accountability and I want us to succeed. So we have to be honest and be intentional with what we're doing.
Right. Look, so first of all, again, I was fortunate to have a manager who is also a mentor and a coach. It's Dave Weiser, the co-founder of Gett. He was my direct manager for the past 5.5 years. So obviously, a lot of the things were things that he kind of challenged me to think on whether I could be more successful focusing on what works. And in general, in Gett, it's something that we do quite a lot, is to look at the data, look at the numbers, and enforce ourselves to kind of really think what business decisions we need to take based on this data. Now, I'm not saying that everything has to be, solely based on data. You always have to bring also your own point of view. And obviously, I'm also a firm believer that even intuition has something to do with it. But when you have clear facts and you look at the numbers, it makes it easier. By the way, shutting down the ventures wasn't the most difficult thing. Like later on in my career, we launched more, ventures, and we had to close them as well. And I'm talking about units that got to be, something like 30 people working on it. So.
Wow.
Yeah, so it happens, right? If you allow yourself to be innovative, to try new things, you just have to take into consideration that some things works, amazingly well, but some just don't. And if it doesn't work, then you better shut it down and move on. Otherwise, it will just kind of drag you down.
100%. Now, obviously, you're an incredible entrepreneur, and you made an intentional decision to be an entrepreneur within an organization like Gett. And so you founded these startups within the larger organization of Gett. And obviously, it must have crossed your mind saying, like, if I'm starting new startups here, maybe I could just start a startup on my own and be an entrepreneur there. What was your thinking, and why did you decide to do it within a larger company?
So that's a great question, because, it took me a very long time to be able to say it very kind of openly, because I do consider myself as entrepreneur, to come and say, I believe that I bring a better version of myself by being an entrepreneur, because I need, the environment that allows me to be innovative rather than starting something from scratch. Now, I'm not saying that in 5 years from today, I may find myself, starting my own startup from scratch. But, the understanding that you can be an entrepreneur inside a company was something that for me was a great revolution. And I would love to share it, because I think that there are many people that from one hand, they feel this urge inside of them of doing new things and thinking outside of the box, and not just to come and be, another person in a big or small company, but to do something unique. But on the other hand, they don't feel ready, or they don't feel that what they want is to start something from scratch. And they don't feel also that they want to join a company of 3 people because they need something more stable. And the fact that you can actually be, what I call entrepreneur. And by the way, in my mind, the definition of entrepreneur is, working for a company, building stuff, and acting as if you are the owner. So you don't see yourself as another employee. You see yourself as the owner. You see yourself in the same way as the founder sees himself or herself. And that's how you kind of operate. You think in the same way that the founder will think. It's just that you work for a company, and the thing is that for the founder, this type of people, the entrepreneurs, they're the best kind of employees, right? Because any founder would want his team to be, of people that sees the company as if it was their own.
I love it.
And to me, it was a great kind of, just a great understanding that, I can feel comfortable, bringing my entrepreneurship urge, I would call it, just to be inside a company, rather than, just building something of my own.
I think that's inspiring, and that's a message that a lot of people, I think, need to hear right now. There is, I think, an understanding or this motivation by a lot of people that say, okay, if you want to be innovative and create something and be an entrepreneur, you need to leave the comfortable company that you love, perhaps, and the people that you work with that you love, and you have to go on this lonely route of being an entrepreneur. And that's not necessarily the case. I was just talking with the chief revenue officer of Hippo, where I work, and we were talking late last night about all the different initiatives, and he just got so excited by all these different startups that we're about to start within the company. And he said, it's there's no reason to, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you don't have to go and be on this lone soldier out there creating your own thing. You can also do it within the community of a very supportive company with the resources of the company, and still have a huge impact and be an entrepreneur, which is just phenomenal. Keren, exactly. I want to really thank you. I really want to thank you for being so generous with your time. I know how busy you are, and I really appreciate that. And before we leave, I have to ask you for 3 words that you would use to describe yourself.
Okay. So that was a tough one.
The hardest one.
Yes. I think that I would go with find your passion. Because one of the things that I've learned, during my career, comparing also the different roles that I got to do during the years, is that when you're passionate about what you're doing, it's like you're a different person.
100%.
Nothing is difficult enough, nothing is hard enough, everything is possible. When you're not passionate, everything becomes, not everything, but things become a hassle, things become more difficult, everything becomes confusing, and it's it's possible to find your passion. It took me, I think, 5 or 6 years before I really got this feeling of saying, wow, I'm so passionate about what I'm doing. I cannot get
Amazing.
Enough of it. So that's my choice.
Toda rabba. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Continue doing amazing things for Gett, for Israel, for me as a consumer, for businesses as consumers, and stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you. You too. Thank you very much.